annoying.
Yeah, it's weird.
On one hand, you don't want it to go away because it's an ancient language. But on the other hand, you're like, can you guys clean this up? Simplify this shit.
I honestly think they got it down pat. You know what I'm saying? Us to have fucking know that shit. You know what I'm saying? Like at the end of the day, they're like, we'll learn English if we want to, but if you want to learn Japanese, it's gonna be difficult, bro.
I want to learn some Asian language because I'm fascinated by reading like Twitter messages. From how many more characters they had?
Yeah.
They can write books.
Yeah.
140 characters. Like, how many words is that though?
Yeah.
That's a lot of fucking words.
True.
If it's 280.
True.
I mean, 280 of those Asian, whether it's Chinese or Japanese, those little symbols. That's a lot of talking, man.
Yeah. It's hard to put like the ingredients on shit.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. Do they have symbols for numbers or just use numbers?
I forgot what the numbers look like. I think it's symbols.
Really?
Yeah. Like I don't imagine that it's like 1, 2, and 3.
Oh wow. Right.
Yeah,
I think something. Yeah. I never even thought of that.
Yeah.
Like what is let's go with Japanese. Does the Japanese language have symbols that represent numbers? Like you would write the letters THREE for 3. Like that. Like you would write 3 or you'd be the number 3.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have that in Japanese?
Nah, because Japanese is like each ni, san, shi.
Oh.
There's different words for it. So it's like one is ichi. So it would, however you spell that in Japanese. I'm starting to kind of remember what it looks like now.
Do you think if you could move back there right now, you'd just get right back in the swing of things after a while?
Sure.
David Lee Roth moved there from Van Halen, the lead singer of Van Halen. He moved down there and took kendo lessons. He lived there for like more than a year.
I would probably appreciate it more now as an adult.
You think so?
Yeah. Because as a kid, you kind of just want to run wild and do everything that you see on TV. But
so you must be annoyed that you were stuck there.
It was kind of weird. You know what I mean? I was 13, like wanting to like go crazy. It was fun for a little while, but you want to go back home and shit. Like, you know what I mean?
Of course.
But as an adult, I feel like I would benefit a lot more from it. Yeah.
So at this stage of your career, when you're looking at like what you're putting down, when you're making albums, when you're putting together your music, like what excites you the most about it?
I'm a huge fan of music in general, so I get just inspired off of like production and shit like that, like the newest producers and shit. Like, cause I like to go out, I like to enjoy myself, I like to have fun. So whatever is popping, like at that time, whatever the sound is, whether it's West Coast inspired or if it's down south inspired, I'm just interested in finding my own way of doing what's new and what my fans would love from me. Because like as a music person, you want something new every time. You don't want the old shit all the time. You could go buy that. So I just love creating and just coming up with. I work with the newest artists. I work with, you know what I mean? I try to make my shit sound different every time. I always tell my engineer, I'm like, yo, let's fuck with the shit sonically so it don't sound the same as the last album. Like, come up with new ad-libs or just different shit to just kind of keep it fresh. Still do what people know me for, you know what I mean? But it's like just coming up with new ways of doing that. I get excited.
That's awesome to hear. I love it when someone loves what they're doing and it comes out great.
Yeah, thanks.
It's beautiful to see. It really is. And that to me is one of the most inspiring things that I get out of any artist. It's like hearing them talk about their process. I don't know why I always get jazzed up. I love it.
It's crazy for me because like there's different ways to do what I do. Like I have so many ways. Like I could sit there and just come up with some shit like brand new, or I have like the Oreo commercial with my son where it's like there's a team of people who like come up with what could be the best for me and I just do that shit and then it just goes crazy. You know what I mean? It's like See You Again is one of my biggest songs and that song had like 8 different people on it, but I wrote 2 verses that the person who made the original song, I wrote 2 verses for it that they loved more than anybody else's song. I mean, anybody else's. So they gave me the whole record, and it ended up being one of my biggest songs. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So it's like the process of just like putting yourself in the situation and just being like, all right, cool, let's work. That's beneficial it's as beneficial as being, you know what I mean, a creative, just, okay, I'm gonna do what I do. You know what I mean? Sometimes you got to step outside of that and just use your talents. It's like being an actor, or, you know what I mean? Like, you just fill in that spot that people need you in. And I'm kind of at that point in my career because I worked so hard and grinded and done so many things and come up with so many waves and ideas that didn't exist before. Now I can use other people's ideas and just be myself and get, you know, a really big effect, and everybody is happy.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Dude, you living the life. You got it nailed.
Hell yeah.
Congratulations.
Hell yeah.
I had a great time talking to you, man.
Thank you,
I really appreciate it, man.
Too. I appreciate you too, bro.
Very nice. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Hell yeah.
That's it, everybody. Bye.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That was Joe Rogan Experience 1306 Wiz Khalifa. Up next, Joe Rogan Experience 1512 Ben Shapiro.
Hello, Ben.
Hey, how's it going?
Dude, we're here. We did it.
We did. We're both alive.
First of all, congratulations on your thinness.
Oh,
You
thank
look
you.
slender and healthy. You look good.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Turns out running away from my children for 4 months straight will do that to you. I literally took up running just to get away from my children.
Just
Oh,
going
yeah.
outside just for some mind
But
space.
it's LA, man. You can't get outside unless you're actively exercising or they come and arrest you. Oh, I could have looted a Foot Locker, right? Then that would have been okay.
Do you run with a mask on?
No,
Does anybody yell at you?
no.
No. What do you go to a track? Like, what do you do?
No, I literally just run around on the streets, hoping that one day I will deal with my children screaming at me. But yeah, that's the goal.
Did you try to get healthier when COVID hit? Like, were you worried? And
A little bit. It really wasn't about COVID. It was just I was eating out too much, and when I was relegated to home, it was like I had to learn how to use the barbecue, which I'd never learned how to use a barbecue actually. And then it turned out it was actually not that hard. So I don't know what I was doing for years.
I gotta give you some elk meat. Are you barbecuing right now?
I have to do kosher, right? So I have to.
Oh, that's not
I'll
kosher
actually.
at all.
Well, I'll have to go get the elk, and I'll have to actually like kill it myself.
Is that what you'd have to do? You'd have to get the elk, and then you'd have to slice its throat or something like that?
Oh yeah, it's good times.
What's the logic behind that?
So I mean, not to get too fast into the biblical stuff,
Right.
but the original logic was that you were supposed to kill the animal in the most humane way. Was the idea. Now, do I know if it's the most humane way now? I have no idea.
It's
but...
most certainly not, Ben.
Okay, well,
Because you have to slice
take it up with the
throat.
rabbis, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I get it. How back in the day, a very sharp knife going through the throat would have been the most humane way because it's almost painless, and then the blood just sort of pours out, and that's a wrap.
Right. You don't want the blood anyway because you're not
Yeah.
allowed to eat blood in Judaism. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So what do you do when you have a medium rare steak?
I mean, you salt the steak really heavily. This is why kosher meat's pretty salty.
So if you go to a steakhouse, are you allowed to go to a steakhouse?
Kosher steakhouse. There are kosher steakhouses.
God, you're so deep in that
I
world.
know, man.
But you're a logical, intelligent guy. Does every now and then?
I like how you juxtapose those.
But does every now and then it fuck with your head? You're like, what is this?
I mean, of course. And then when I don't know, there's a religious person alive. I mean, who doesn't eventually go like, okay, it's a little weird, but all right. You got to embrace the system.
But you feel like for tradition and for just the whole Jewish culture, it's worth doing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you live the lifestyle, and I feel like it ain't that big a sacrifice to eat at particular restaurants. The restaurants are still good. They've still got good kosher restaurants.
One thing that we're seeing with society and culture in general, and one thing that sort of does support the idea of maintaining these sort of rigid disciplines, is that when things start to slide just a little, you lose these little incremental steps. They slide, and people go, "Oh God, what's the big deal? What do you care?" And you're like, "I see where this is going. Like it's going down that way. This is not going to stop. It's sliding."
Oh yeah, and you saw it in LA. I mean, I lived in LA my whole life, and the move from LA being a pretty safe, fairly nice city, suburban in orientation, to just overrun with horror shows is really. It was a lot faster than I thought it would be, but it's sort of you're right. It's a gradual decline, and then it's just off a cliff.
Well, you started to see tents. and you didn't see them at all for decades. And then all of a sudden I started seeing tents. I remember I was doing Fear Factor in Skid Row in the early 2000s. We would film down there, and I'd be like, this is crazy. Like, has anybody seen this? Does anybody know this? Because there was these homeless streets. Like, you would go down these gigantic, and downtown LA back then, for people who don't live in LA, you would think, oh, downtown's like downtown New York or downtown Cleveland. No. Downtown LA was a no man's land.
Nothing's going on in downtown LA.
It is now. Like, there's, well, it was pre-COVID. It was like there was some bars and there was some really cool upscale apartment buildings. It was kind of picking up. But I took my family there before COVID, like 4 months before COVID or so. We were going to go to, there's a famous donut place there. So we said, just one of those goofy Sunday things, like, what do you guys want to do today? Let's go get donuts. So we went to downtown LA, like, holy shit, literally shit, human shit on the streets. Everything smelled like piss. Bums everywhere, and I'm like, okay, stay close to me, stay over here. If anybody comes near you, move closer to me. Like, Jesus Christ, like, this is crazy. Like, I don't want them to be freaked out, but I'm like, this is nuts.
Well, the thing is that sort of disaster area stuff in LA was sort of localized, right? It really, like, I worked in the LADA's office for a summer when I was in law school. It's been like 2007, so it's a while ago. And I remember they had a giant tent city, and you had to walk from the car. They made you park a mile away and walk it, and so you're walking through Skid Row. And it's like, okay, well, this is really terrible. And honestly, I feel bad for these people because I don't think the best solution for people who are drug addicted or mentally ill is to live on the street. And a heavy percentage of people who are homeless are drug addicted or mentally ill. But, is it for people who are living in the suburbs, like, this is at least localized. It's not like reaching into your life. And then over the past 13 years, like, I live in a pretty decent suburban area. I'm seeing like open needles on the street. Walked out of my house one day, there's just a guy lying face down in the gutter like Edgar Allan Poe. Like, and I thought, well, this is falling apart rather quickly.
What do you think caused the slide or the expansion of the slide? Because I agree with you that it was very isolated. Skid Row was very isolated. Downtown LA was I remember one time we were filming in downtown LA and we were on a gurney, or I guess that's what are those things called where it lifts up? Anyway, we were filming some Fear Factor stunt, and as we got up, we could see people smoking crack. And I go, oh, look, there's people smoking crack right there. And the guests on the show, like, a lot of them, they fly from all over the country. They're like, is that real? They're really smoking crack? I'm like, that's crack. That's a homeless person smoking crack. Welcome to LA. It's right there. But I didn't feel bad about it. I felt like, look, it's unfortunate, but this is not like indicative of all of LA. We're just in a shitty spot because it's really cheap to film here. Right. So here you go. You got a little gift. You get to see some weird shit while you're here. But I didn't think it was ever going to get to the point where you're on like Winnetka off the 101, and there's 80 fucking tents, and they put a porta potty there. They put a porta potty there.
We're doing real building and real development here in Los Angeles. Not apartment buildings. We got some porta potties. Every underpass shall have a porta potty, thanks to Mayor Eric Garcetti.
You pay attention to Paula. What happened? How did it get to this?
Well, on this particular problem, this actually started with a bunch of lawsuits. So the LAPD used to have the authority to move people's shit if it was on the sidewalk. If people had a bunch of stuff that was on the sidewalk and they're just camping out there, the LAPD could come and they could take their stuff away and they could rouse them, or they could arrest them for trespass or for loitering. And then the ACLU actually sued, and they said that this is a violation of people's personal property. And the courts,
you do such good work sometimes.
And the courts ruled that you actually are not allowed to move people's stuff, that's actually personal property, even though it's in a public area. And then they got a ruling from a court that you're allowed to live in your car, because for a while you weren't allowed to live in your car, and then it was you're allowed to live in your car. So now you're basically allowed to leave your stuff on the sidewalk, and the police are not allowed. They can do it in business districts, but why can't they do it in like more suburban areas? Why can't they just move into nicer areas? After all, if there's misery, it should be equally spread across the city. And that's kind of what you've seen. I mean, there have been so many breaking points over the last year in the city, and for me and my wife, I mean, we looked at the rioting, and they shut down the entire city at 6 p.m. It's a county of 12 million people. And they shut down the entire county so that douchebags could run around shattering windows, pretending that they were standing up for social justice. They shut down Beverly Hills at 1 p.m. They shut down Rodeo Drive at 1 p.m. so that people could run up and down Rodeo Drive talking about how capitalism sucks while tweeting from their iPhone.
While stealing Nikes. You know, there was two moments where I was like, this is a real opportunity for us to come together. And one of them was the moment the lockdown happened. It felt to me very similar to right after 9/11, where everybody was confronted with their own mortality. Like, holy shit, like we we might be on the verge of a pandemic, like in a movie, where a lot of the people we know die. And here, we have to be kind to each other. We have to be, this is what's important. Family's important. And I remember thinking, I've never been closer to my family. Never been closer to my friends. We were calling each other all the time. It was like, there was real hope in that. I was like, if we get through this, we're going to be tighter. We're going to know what means something, what counts. Fuck stand-up comedy. Fuck everything else, man. What's important is love and friendship. Then it started to get angry. It only took like 3 or 4 weeks where people started getting, like, they were scared. So people started getting shittier with each other online. And then I basically swore off Twitter. I was like, this is just too toxic and too hostile. The second moment where I thought we had the opportunity to come together was George Floyd. So George Floyd died. And all of a sudden, you have these Black Lives Matter protests, and I'm like, maybe we could finally make a dent on racism. Maybe we can finally make a dent in police brutality. Maybe this is a moment where we can come together and realize what's important. It's community, solidarity, that we're all in this together. Like, this is crazy. And then the cops need to be reformed. Like, they can't live like, and maybe we should take into account PTSD. Maybe we should take into account the fact that these fucking guys are pulling up on people every day that might shoot them in the face. They might never be able to see their family and their kids. Let's rework this. Let's think this shit through. Nope. And then chaos. And then all of a sudden it became like what we saw yesterday, where they're breaking into Amazon Go in Seattle. Like, that fucking guy owns the Washington Post. He owns the most left-wing newspaper in America. And you're like, not good enough.
Well, you saw they set up like a fake guillotine outside of Bezos' house in Washington, D.C.
It's insane.
And it's madness.
He's too rich.
I totally agree with you, by the way. Like, when COVID happened, I thought, I can't really see how we're going to split in partisan fashion over this thing.
Right.
Like, everybody wants to live, and everybody would also like to eventually get back to regular life. And the better we can live, the better we can get back to regular life. So it seems like, okay, we're on board. When it came to the lockdowns, the original lockdowns, I was like, okay, I'm on board. You know, I'm taking this thing really seriously. I've got parents in their 60s. I feel like, you know, I'm in good health. I'm fairly young. I'm 36. But for my parents, I don't want my parents getting this thing. Watched that tape and didn't think, okay, that guy deserves to go to jail. Chauvin, right? The officer in that case, in the George Floyd case. Everyone I know, every single person was like, yeah, that's real bad. Like, that's, and cops, like, I know tons of cops. I'm friendly with tons of cops. Police procedure. I'm glad he did that. Like, no one thought that. And so when people, maybe we'll take a look at qualified immunity. Maybe we'll take a look at police unions and the kind of restrictive covenants that they have with the cities, and how we make sure that everybody knows who the bad cops are so they can't get hired at different places. Like, all those are solutions. But they quickly turn from, well, we don't want to talk about solutions. Solutions are a bad idea. What we need to do is we need to shout about everything we can possibly imagine all at once. And you know what? Instead, let's have a conversation about, like, was George Washington a bad guy? Let's have a conversation instead about, like, just completely defunding the police. We want to have, like, a responsible conversation about things that make sense. We'll talk about, like, what if we just got rid of the police?
How crazy is that discussion? That discussion, when people were really saying defund the police, I'm like, cooler heads will prevail. They're going to realize. And I think they're realizing it now in New York City. I mean, New York City has had record crime, record homicides.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? De Blasio is, I mean, I would have never imagined I would look at Garcetti and go, well, he's better.
That's exactly right.
I look at Garcetti and I look at De Blasio. I'm like, Garcetti, I have him over my house for dinner. He's way better than
the weird
De Blasio.
is groundhog murderer.
So weird. He's so, you can have protests, but only Black Lives Matter protests.
That one, that was a solid. You know, that may have been the moment when I realized that we were all effed. Right? It was the moment when, like, we're in the middle of a global pandemic, with hundreds of thousands of people dead, and an entire swath of our media and health elites just decided randomly that if you were protesting against lockdown, you were very bad, right? Then you were a racist and you were going to get people killed and you should wear a mask. And I was like, well, if you're I sort of agree with the mask thing. Like, okay. And then you get millions of people in the streets yelling at each other and breathing on each other and spitting on each other. And you got health professionals on TV being like, well, racism is a public health threat. I guess that you can do that now. It's like, well, what the? I know people who died in the hospital of COVID and their family could not visit them. Yeah. Like, they literally died alone in the hospital of COVID and family could not visit them. And you're telling me that it's deeply important that we have, like, dance lines. This was stuff happening at rallies, like dance lines in the streets in New York to fight racism. that's deeply important. But a daughter being able to visit her dad before he dies, that's not important. Come on, what bullshit?
I am for your freedom to protest. I'm 100% for your freedom to protest. I'm also for your freedom to go to the gym. I'm also for your freedom to go to a comedy club if you so choose. I'm for your freedom to go to a restaurant. Look, they figured out how to do restaurants in a lot of places. The servers wear masks, and many of them wear face shields. You distance the tables apart from each other. You do temperature checks. You take people's names and addresses down when they enter, so that if anybody gets sick, if there's any sort of, and they've been able to do this.
No, this is right. The vectors of transmission are typically closed areas, people in solid proximity with each other for long periods of time.
Yes.
Right. That's the stuff where people are getting this stuff. And I trust most Americans not, like, some Americans are dumbasses. Some people are just dumbasses.
Oh, there's a lot of videos. You watch YouTube. There's plenty of Karens out there. How sad is it if your name is Karen and you're a good person? All the good Karens out there. I'm sorry, ladies. I'm really sorry.
But it's like this. I made this point online. I got shellacked for it, but I was pointing out that most Americans are wearing masks right now. By polling data, 59% of Americans say that they always wear a mask when they leave the house. And if you look at the map of mask wearing, across the board, in the places where there are the most cases,